So today we're going to take a look at Roland's awkward sibling. Thank you, Rob, for the loan. All the way from Scotland, this is the MC-202. XOX is a naming scheme that Roland have used, well, throughout the entire history of the company, but I would stick my neck out and say that most people associate XOX with a collection of devices released in the first part of the 1980s. 5 drum machines in release order: the TR-808, 606, 909, 707 and 505, and 3 synthesizers: the SH-101, the MC-202 and the TB-303. And before you ask, no, there wasn't a 404, well, not at least until the early 2000s. Now, the drum machines all have the same prefix, TR, transistor rhythm, but the synthesizers have different prefixes. SH is rumoured to be an abbreviation of the Japanese word for synthesizer, although Roland don't actually confirm this in any of their official documentation, so that's a best guess. TB is definitely transistor base, and MC is microcomposer. That's right, Corporal 202 is a microcomposer. Now, if you follow this channel, you'll be aware that I have bored you silly with way too much information about the original microcomposers, a personal passion of mine. But in a nutshell, the MC8 was a groundbreaking 8-channel digital sequencer from 1977. The successor, the MC4 from 1981, was a 4-channel digital sequencer used on a lot of hit records. And so, unsurprisingly, the 202 is a little 2-channel digital sequencer. But for the first time in the 202, a microcomposer could make its own sounds rather than just control external equipment. The 202 is both a synth and a sequencer. One channel controls the onboard synth, the other channel controls an offboard synth. And this, via some MIDI sequencers which were microcomposers, pivoted Roland off towards the MC-303, which was the first groove box. And whilst that's a term that's now used for any device like that, regardless of the manufacturer, that was where it started with the 303. So the 202 is kind of the evolutionary link between this and the groove box. So the 202 is based on 2 other Roland synths, one the SH-101, but also the CMU-810, which was developed by Roland's digital group and was part of their early foray into desktop sound modules that were controlled by a computer. So what's the difference between a 101 and a 202? And a big shout out to Autoy for giving me this information so that I can seem clever without doing any work. So there's a couple of obvious things. It's got a cut down LFO and it hasn't got a noise generator. But other than that, it appears to be the same and it uses the same circuits. For example, Curtis Electro Music 3340 VCOs, Roland's proprietary IR3109 filters, and the BA662 amplifiers. However, when you start playing them, whilst they do sound very similar, they're not actually quite the same. So sawtooth wave seems similar, although not quite exactly the same. Until you play them together, and now you can see that they are phase inverted. The 101 has a falling sawtooth, where the 202 has a rising. So they've got a slight tonal difference there. No idea why they did that. So that's the first thing. Next thing, if we come over to the lovely juicy sub oscillator, sound very similar until you mix in another wave. That sounds different. Why? Well, this is because the sub-oscillator on the 101 is phase-locked to the other waves. On the 202, it is not. I don't know why. So it has a kind of looser, kind of phasier sound. More evident when you bring in the pulse wave. It's just a bit smushier somehow. Oh my goodness, they sound cool together, don't they? Might have to do that, do a stereo 101, 202. So that's basically the difference in the implementation of the same circuits. No idea why they did that, but they did. So you may be thinking, that's quite a swanky screen for a synth from 1983. And that's because this is not any old 202. This is a 202. So the brilliant Toby from Tubbutec turned his attention to the 202 recently, like he has done with numerous other synths. So yeah, let's give a little blast of the 202. So let's talk about the legacy of the 202. Now, some brilliant information from Roland Japan, thank you to them. This went into production in March of 1983, and they stopped producing it in October of 1983. It was only in production for 7 months. It might have been in shops for longer than that, but they only made it for a short period. It was not a successful product. By contrast, Captain SH of the 101s over here went into production in September of 82, and they kept on making it all the way until May of 1988. It nearly made it to the 90s, the 101. I had no idea that it was such a successful product. Now, as the famous story goes, once these products were outdated, they wound up in second-hand shops and were picked up by young musicians who made them an integral part of new genres of music. And whilst the 202 is not as famous as the 101 or the 303 or the 808 or the 909, it absolutely was part of that as well. And the list of musicians who used it is pretty comprehensive, but I just want to pick out one, who is Ben Watkins of Juno Reactor. Now, in a number of interviews, Ben has stated that the 202 is where he came into synthesis, and it's been an integral part of their workflow and of their sound, and has been used on pretty much all of their records. So if you want to hear some comprehensive use of the 202, go and check out some Juno Reactor. Now, if you like the sound of the 202, I have made a little sample pack and contact patch. As ever, that is available on the top tier of my Patreon. Thank you to my patrons for their ongoing support. Thank you to Rob for the loan of this. Thank you to Calc for the loan of this. Thank you to Altoy for the help. And thank you to you for watching.